Hey everybody, I'm JJ, you're watching Reality Survival, and I just want to do another follow-up video talking a little bit more about how to seal up your home and to have it be ready to deal with nuclear fallout. I've done another video or two talking about this, and based on the comments, I don't think people are entirely getting it. And so I'm going to try to explain it a little bit more in detail here, because maybe I'm not laying something out, or maybe there's something in my mind that I know that I'm not particularly saying. So I've made some notes here to try to hit all the high points and make sure that this is understandable. But anyway, let's go ahead and go into that. Now, as you guys know, if you watch the channel regularly, which I know 90% of viewers who watch this channel are not subscribed, so if you would subscribe, that'd be great. So for the regular viewers, this might be a little bit repetitive, but I know that a lot of people are concerned about this, and there's a lot of, a lot of worry about nuclear war. And I'll just tell you up front that I don't really believe that nuclear war is likely, and I definitely don't think that a full-bore exchange, an all-out nuclear war is even remotely likely to happen at all. I think that's a very, very low likelihood. And yes, I understand what normalcy bias is, and it's not because I have normalcy bias that I'm saying that. It's because I have 26 years of experience with the Air Force, and I understand something about military and tactics and all those kinds of things, and I just don't think it's a realistic option at this point. People want to stay in positions of power. They just do. And mutually assured destruction would ensure that nobody gets to stay in power if they did that. So I don't think that's likely. But it is possible that we could see a limited exchange where, maybe we shoot over 4 or 5 bombs, or they shoot over 4 or 5 bombs, and then we shoot over 4 or 5 bombs, and then that's it. That's all that happens. Nobody else responds further, and they just take their losses, and then a conventional war, ensues. So that is a way more likely scenario. Now, in a limited exchange situation where there was only 4 or 5 bombs, that's primarily what this video is going to talk about, because there's really not any point in me talking to you about how to survive a full-on exchange, because there's more than enough nuclear weapons active in this world to make basically the whole surface of the earth uninhabitable. So it would be very, very difficult for people to survive. Now, it's not to say that there wouldn't be any survivors necessarily. Some people might be able to survive in some places, but it ain't going to be a whole lot, right? So anyway, that's aside the point. So then the main thing to remember here is that in a limited exchange situation, not everybody is going to have to shelter in place. Your proximity to the detonation or your location downwind, and generally speaking, it's if you're to the east of the target, that's going to direct your need as to whether or not you need to shelter in place. So the prevailing winds in the United States pretty much run from west to the east. I don't know if that's west or east for you, but so in a limited exchange, I've talked to you guys before, the most likely targets are not necessarily military bases. A lot of people think that they would be. That's really not the case. If they were only going to do a limited exchange, they would most likely do high population centers in cities that have a lot of population, a lot of people, and significant infrastructure targets. Okay, so if you live to the east of a large city that potentially also has a lot of infrastructure and all that kind of stuff, then you're a person who probably would have a higher likelihood of needing to shelter in place. Okay, so for example, if you lived maybe to the east of Houston, or I don't know, the prevailing winds map, you can take a look at the prevailing winds map, right? and you can see where you live, and then you can look at the major cities that are close to you and say, hey, do I look like I'm in any fallout areas? Now, there is no guarantee that that is exactly what they're going to hit, right? This is an assessment off of, my experience and understanding of these kinds of things. Maybe I'm wrong, all right? I mean, I'm a guy sitting here talking to you on YouTube, so take it for what it's worth. But my point is that if you live 50 or 60 miles outside, from the nearest big city, and you're not necessarily downwind, but you're even upwind from those cities, then in a limited exchange scenario, you probably are not going to ever have to even shelter in place at all. Okay? So this isn't a concern for everyone, I guess, is my main point in mentioning this. It's only probably a concern for certain groups of people. All right? Now, it's not necessarily a bad thing to know what to do, though, just in case something else weird happens. And these missiles aren't as accurate as people think that they are either. Sometimes they can be off as much as 30, 40, 50 miles. They're not as accurate as people like to think. They're not. It's not like the pinpoint accuracy that some of the U.S. guided weapons have and all that kind of stuff. So just take that for what it's worth. The other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit more is fallout. Now, there are two primary things that you need to remember about fallout. First, bigger particles have more radioactive density. And what I mean by that is that they are going to emit more radiation photons, gamma radiation photons, because they have more mass and more molecules and all that kind of, they're bigger, right? So they're also going to drop to the ground faster because they're heavier. They are the most dangerous during the first few hours. All right? That is a key thing to remember. Time is on your side when it comes to dealing with fallout. Second thing is that smaller particles will stay airborne a lot longer because they're lighter and they'll stay adrift in wind currents. Okay? And while they are up in the air, they are also going through the decay process and becoming more stable isotopes while they're airborne because they have less mass, like I said. Now, however, if those smaller particles, if you're in an area where you're around smaller particles, maybe you're really close to where the detonation site was or something, if you inhale those particles, the decaying alpha and beta particles can be very dangerous to you. Okay, so most likely, just trying to be realistic about this, if you're close enough to the detonation site that it's still very dusty and stuff everywhere and all that kind of thing, you probably already have a significant radiation to deal with, okay? Because a lot of that, the way that the mushroom clouds are formed is, it blows up and everything goes out and then it sucks right back in. So you get two rushes of air, one going out and one coming back in, and then it takes all of that debris and it funnels it up into the mushroom cloud, right? That's what forms it. So most people that are within a visual distance of that bomb going off, you're not going to experience. It's not going to be like 9/11, right? 9/11 in the pictures, everybody sees the dust is everywhere and everybody's covered with all that stuff. The only people that are going to have to deal with that are the people that are pretty much, close to, within a couple of miles of the detonation location. And those people are going to have a difficult time surviving because they probably are receiving lethal doses of radiation and injuries from debris and all that kind of stuff, and the glass and debris and everything else that's going everywhere. And they're going to have a whole other set of problems that this information is not pertaining to. Okay, and I don't think that I have. their situation is just going to be dire. Okay, so the people that this information is for is those people who are outside that immediate catastrophic zone that are still living and have intact shelters, and they're thinking, "Holy crap, what do I do?" All right, that's who this information is guided for. Okay. Okay, so I got off on a little bit of a rabbit trail there. Sorry about that. Let's see. Okay, so lucky for us, physics is a thing, which means that the smaller and finer particles will mostly be taken up into the clouds by the thermal heat column that forms the mushroom cloud, unless you're very close to ground zero. All right. In that case, radioactive fallout will be the least of your concerns. So that was kind of what I was trying to explain. The most pressing immediate concern for most survivors will be the larger fallout particles that will start to rain down in the first 10 minutes to an hour, depending on your location from ground zero. The vast majority of smaller particles will stay suspended in the atmosphere much longer and will be decaying while they're airborne. If you get inside an adequate shelter quickly, and you take some basic steps to make sure it's safe, you won't need to worry about wearing a gas mask while you shelter in place. If you want to, by all means, go right ahead. It's fine. It ain't going to hurt anything, right? It's not going to hurt you. But just make sure that you've got extra filters, because one filter is only going to last about 8 hours or so of continuous use. And if you're going to shelter in place for 2 weeks, you're going to need a lot of filters. If you want to wear an N95 mask or something like that, sure, go right ahead. It can't hurt, right? But it's probably not necessary either. The thing is in reality, if you're inside of a shelter, then and you're not necessarily so close to ground zero that you see a bunch of dust in the air and all that. If you've got normal atmospheric conditions around you and normal levels of visibility and all that kind of stuff, then you don't have to worry about inhaling the particles, especially if you're inside. Okay. Let's see here. All right, just get inside. Stay inside and wait it out. Time is your friend in this case. Okay, so let's talk about if you're outside when a detonation happens. Basically, you want to immediately lay face down, behind cover if possible. Keep your arms underneath you. Keep your mouth slightly open. And do not look at the bright flash. Stay in place until the second rush of air comes over you. So again, one's going to go out, and then it's going to come back in. So after that comes back in, and get up, and you want to move to cover if possible. You want to, because you're probably in an area with a lot of flying debris and all that kind of stuff, you want to go ahead and cover your face and your nose and all that kind of stuff until you can get inside of a shelter where there's normal atmospheric conditions. All right. If you're blinded, it's likely going to be temporary, and your vision should hopefully come back in a minute or a couple minutes, something like that. Now, it is possible that it could be permanent, but they say that most blindness from these flashes is temporary. Okay, if you're in a vehicle, you want to look away from the blast, come to a full stop safely as possible. Get down as low in the car as you can, and after the second rush of air passes, immediately drive to your shelter location as quickly as you can. Is that going to be easy to do? No, I'm not saying it's going to be easy to do. But if your car runs, if you've got an EMP shield on your car, then you're going to be able to at least make an attempt, right? And instead of having to walk. So do that. All right. So yeah, depending on your proximity to the blast, it's possible that your car will not run properly after the detonation because of an electromagnetic pulse that is given off that happens when a nuclear bomb explodes. You can try to unplug the battery entirely and reconnect it to see if that helps clear things out, but most likely only about 30% of cars are going to run right due to a short-range EMP that happens when a nuclear bomb detonates. If your car is protected with an EMP shield, you won't be one of those 70% that has to walk home, and you can just drive and take advantage of that. If you use the discount code Reality Survival at empshield.com, it'll save you $50 per unit. So just discount code Reality Survival, all one word. All right. Now, next item here is that most average homes in America do not need to be sealed up with plastic. There's really no reason to have to seal your home up with plastic. I don't know who it is that talks about this. I think it might be some confusion from the wording on the CDC website. It talks about seal your doors and windows. They just mean close them. You don't necessarily have to put up plastic over them. Now, if you have big gaps without weather stripping and stuff like that, then just take some duct tape and put right over it, and then that'll be fine. You just want to keep the dust outside. That's it. If your windows are broken, then that's obviously different. You need to cover that with some plastic or some plywood or something, and we'll talk more about that. Okay. All right, let me just read this whole thing over here. So, most average homes in America do not need to be sealed up with plastic. There is especially no reason to seal up your home with plastic before a nuclear detonation. The detonation will just break the windows and the plastic if you were somewhat close to ground zero. So if you're close enough to what you think is a target and you're like, well, I'm just going to put this stuff up now ahead of time, that's probably not a great idea, because if the pressure wave comes through and blows all your windows out, then it's just going to rip up your plastic and everything anyway. So there's no point in doing that. Okay. Just have a couple rolls of duct tape to seal the door sweeps and any drafty windows, and then if you want to have some heavy plastic sheeting to tape up over any broken windows that may occur during blast damage, then that's fine. That's reasonable. All right. If there is a blast and you have significant catastrophic damage to your house, not just broken windows, okay, and you're still alive, you're probably going to have some injuries. You essentially have two choices as far as I can see. First, your injuries, if your injuries are not too significant and you have a decent basement to shelter in that is still intact, you should probably just bunker in place for at least 48 hours. Okay? 48 hours is going to, the fallout is going to have a dramatic reduction in effectiveness, and it would probably be safe for you to move quickly to another location then after that. Some place that would be more suitable, perhaps a hospital in the next town over or something along those lines. Okay. Fire is also going to be a big consideration here. There are going to be a lot of fires in the immediate vicinity, and you need to be thinking about that, because you might be sheltering in place, but half of your neighborhood is on fire, and then fires can spread from one house to another, and so that could potentially endanger your shelter out location. So you need to kind of just be aware of that and think about how you would deal with that. Being out and about when the fallout starts to fall is not good. Breathing it in is very, very bad. All right. You only want to move during this time if you have adequate personal protective equipment like an NBC rated gas mask, Tyvek suits or ponchos, or good layer of outer clothing. If you get exposed during the blast, there's to the radiation from the actual detonation itself, there's not a lot you can do to treat radiation poisoning without advanced medical assistance, aside from potentially taking iodine and other chelating agents ahead of time or as soon as possible after the blast. So there's not much you can do there, right? If you're hurt enough that you have to move or whatever, you might want to have some protective equipment. So there's some links in the description below to Mira Safety. They offer some pretty good gas masks and stuff like that. Like I said before, I don't necessarily think that everybody has to have those, but if you feel like you're in a situation where you live in a city that could be a potential target, you're in a heavily like an urban area or something like that where there's going to be an additional amount of debris and all that kind of stuff, then maybe you want to get some. Then you can check them out and see if you think that it's going to work for you. Any military, you don't necessarily have to get those. Any military NBC rated, NATO approved kind of filter or gas mask is going to work fine for that. It's just particulate is all you're really taking out. So the second option there is to leave your home immediately and get to a better shelter location further from the blast, but with a more protected shelter. Now, this, of course, would only be if you could travel and had a pre-selected location to go to with your kit already ready to leave at a moment's notice. So you've really only got 10 to 15 minutes, something like that. You're going to have to, this would have to happen quickly, and the roads are going to be a mess. So your alternate sheltering location aside from your house, and really, if you live in one of these cities that you think could be a target, you should have a couple picked out. Like, hey, maybe I'll go there, maybe I'll go here, whatever. Have a few places located. Have your bug out bag kind of all packed and ready to go, and that way you could move from one place to another if you had to. But it's got to be close, because you don't want to get stuck outside in that. This is not good news. So if you had to move because of damage to your house, then you need to do it very fast. You need to do it quickly. Okay. Okay. It's probably going to be a little longer video because I still got several items here. If the home is a suitable place to shelter and it only has minor damage and some broken windows that are still intact, but the home is largely still intact, then close up those broken windows with plastic sheeting and shelter in place. If the home is not suitable to shelter, then you should immediately move to a better option. Again, something within 10 minutes or so. If you can't or don't have a place to go, then you're stuck with what you got. You're just going to have to deal with it. And that sucks. Next one here is if you live in an average home, and I think I said this earlier, if you live in an average home with no major leaks, you're not going to need to do too much to seal up your home. You don't have to be in a hermetically sealed thing. It's the larger fallout that we talked about earlier that's going to come down fairly quickly that is going to present you the most problem right after a nuclear detonation. Those finer particles are not coming down super fast like the heavier stuff is. Okay, and so it's not going to be like radioactive dust clouds rolling around or whatever the case may be. That lighter dust is going to be higher up in the atmosphere, and while it's doing that, it's decaying and it's becoming less and less problematic as it goes. All right. I'm trying to find my spot here. Okay, so you could also, if you want to do something to prepare, you could also pre-cut some plywood, and you could take those and put those over your broken windows. This is most likely going to be needed, again, if you're closer to a big city, if you're closer to a potential target or something like that, then maybe it would make sense to do this. But remember, plywood or plastic sheeting does not stop gamma radiation. Okay, it doesn't stop gamma radiation. It just keeps the fallout from coming into your house so that you're not breathing it in. All right, and again, go back and look at some of those lessons I've done, the previous videos that I've done talking about what radiation is, how it affects you, and all that kind of stuff. It's a nuclear survival skills playlist on my channel. There's 10 or 12 videos you should check out. All right. Okay, so in previous videos I talked a little bit about the idea of taking like a cotton sock or something and putting that over plumbing vents on your roof if you can. Most people probably are not going to have time to do this, right? You're probably going to be getting other things ready, to shelter in place and all that kind of stuff. You're probably not going to have time, the wherewithal and the time to be able to do that. If you could, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, could you do it ahead of time? I suppose you probably could, but that's probably not likely. And all that would do is basically if you have most houses have plumbing vents that come up out of the roof. They're basically a plastic pipe. When fallout comes in, some fallout could potentially fall down those vents and then go inside your pipes, and you could be a little bit closer to it depending on where you're sheltering in your house. So I had the idea, we'll just put a sock over the top of it. That'll keep the fallout from coming in, but your plumbing will still work because the plumbing gases can still vent out of it. Now, you could potentially do that ahead of time. I don't know. I mean, do you want to have a sock on your roof? And if it mattered, I don't know. I just thought I'd readdress that one. Let's see. So, and I guess kind of my point is that unless you have everything else ready to go, getting up on your roof at a time after that is probably not the smartest use of your time. Same thing goes with a chimney. You could cover your chimney up. If you don't use your chimney right now, you could cover it ahead of time. But you could also just seal up the chimney on the inside of the house, and that would be okay too. It doesn't necessarily have to be on the roof, because that may or may not make sense or be very easy for you to do quickly. Okay. Now, if you do have some advance warning, let's say that you get a notification that there are incoming, missiles or whatever the case may be, it's a good idea to go ahead and turn off your HVAC, your heating and cooling, and most likely you're going to lose power anyway, especially if you live closer to the blast in a big city and all that kind of stuff. But it doesn't hurt to go ahead and shut it off. And especially if you're in a rural area, maybe you're more downwind or something along those lines, and you get power from a different power generation source than the main city, then you would still want to go ahead and turn that HVAC system off, because you don't want air circulating within your house. All right, and that's not going to keep you from being able to breathe or anything like that. There's plenty of air penetration. Even the dust and stuff is not going to come through, but air will still be able to get into your house, and you still be able to breathe. Let's see here. It's just like in normal times, most of the dust that you see in your house isn't from dust from outside. It's dust from your skin cells and your hair and your dogs and your cats and clothing fibers and all that kind of stuff. So I guess that's what I'm trying to convey there. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. Some people have talked about putting a sprinkler on top of your home in order to wash the fallout off of the roof. And I think this is an interesting idea, but I don't know if it really has a ton of merit. When we think through a little bit more critically on it, there could be some unforeseen consequences for that. First off, you may not have any water pressure. If the tower is messed up and a lot of pipes are damaged and all that kind of stuff, there may not be pressure within the system, so you just might not have any water available to be able to do that. Also, the electricity is probably going to be cut off in the city, so again, it just may not be an option. But then you also have to think about concentrating fallout on the ground closer to you. It may cause more harm than good, so you got to think that through carefully. So for example, if your home's gutter system comes down and empties right in the corner, in the same corner of where you have like a walkout basement or something, and you're going to shelter in that corner, you could potentially just be concentrating fallout closer to where you're sheltering. So what I'm saying is it might be better to just leave it on the roof, because it would be further away and you wouldn't get as much of it and all that kind of stuff. So again, it depends on your circumstances, it depends on your situation. I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's wrong. It might have some viability. You just need to really critically think that through, and make sure that it's implemented appropriately before you do it. The other one that we've talked about in the comments recently, some folks have talked about, is putting up tarps at steep angles outside the house, like connected to the eaves of the house and then going to the ground. And they would do that in order to keep the fallout from gathering close to the edges of the house. Again, this is also an interesting idea, but it could have some merit, but there also are some other considerations to think about. So if the fallout gathers on the tarp, let's say that your tarp isn't at steep enough of an angle. Maybe it's only like this. And some of this fallout is gathering higher up on the tarp or midway on the tarp. And then your shelter location in your house is down here. Now you've given a path for the gamma radiation to get to you more easily without having to go through more mass, right? So that could potentially cause a problem. So if you were going to do this, you would definitely want to make sure that it's at a pretty steep angle so that no dust is going to pile up or accumulate on that tarp. The other thing is, I think that was pretty much it on that one. Oh, no, the other thing is if you're going to, if you were planning on, like if you had a gas mask and all that, and you're like, well, I'll just go out every so often and shake the tarp off, and to settle the fallout down at the base of the tarp. Just think about the fact that you're potentially exposing yourself. You're potentially getting additional fallout and stuff on your clothing, and then when you come back in, you're contaminating your safe space, your area, that you're staying. So I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze on that one. You'd have to think through on your own if you want to do that or not. But I'm not 100% sure if that is worth it. All right. So just something to think about. The next one here. Okay, so I want to reiterate the key thing to surviving nuclear radiation, especially fallout, is time, distance, and shielding. So 2 weeks, if at all possible. 2 days as a minimum, as a vast minimum, before even going out. Like, you really definitely should not go outside more than 2 days. Stay sheltered. You really should try to stay 2 weeks, because that'll give you a 99% reduction in the effectiveness of that fallout. Distance, the inverse square law is your friend, okay? You want to stay as far away from the source of radiation as possible. And then shielding, you want to if you want to put stuff out ahead of time, like if you wanted to start organizing your basement and putting, stuff in a circle or in an area or something like that where you would kind of shelter in the middle of, maybe that's not a terrible idea. But you want that stuff to be as heavy and as dense as possible. And remember, you will have fallout on your roof as well. So you will have exposure from radiation coming straight down through your home as well. So whatever fallout location you figure out, you want to have some stuff above you if possible. Now, if what that means is that if you were going to be in your basement, you could just go directly above the area in your basement on the ground floor up and put a bunch of mass over the top of you there. You don't have to build like a fort or whatever in your basement. Just have stuff above you on the level above you. Okay. And again, I've done some lessons on fallout shelters, what they look like, kind of what you would want to do and all that. So having your shelter location picked out ahead of time would be useful. Some good common household objects for blocking gamma radiation are going to be concrete blocks, bags of topsoil, sandbags filled with dirt or sand, solid wooden or steel interior doors. Don't take your exterior doors off. Feed sacks filled with dirt. All wooden dressers that maybe have the drawers packed with dirt, filled with dirt. Buckets of food, buckets of dirt or sand, plastic totes filled with dirt or sand, bags of concrete, that kind of stuff. Heavy, dense stuff. That's the kind of stuff that's going to protect you. You're shooting to have a couple feet of thickness around you on all sides. Okay? Now, I've shown you different graphics that talk about the halving and all that kind of stuff. None of that really matters. Like, you just want to have as much as you can around you. All right? Some crappy items that some people might initially think are good are as follows. Mattresses, not good. Couches, fluffy chairs, loose clothes, hollow doors, single sheets of plywood. Anything light or thin or something that is not dense is not going to help you. Okay, not very much. Now, something is better than nothing, but it's not going to give you much protection. So you want to be prepared to stay there, stay in that shelter location for 2 weeks. You need to have food that doesn't need to be cooked. MREs are probably best because they're also going to help you to keep you from having to poop so much because they stop you up. And you also need to be ready to deal with poop from you and your pets if you have pets. Maybe getting potty pads for the pets or something like that. Litter box, bigger litter boxes if you got dogs. I don't know. It's not going to be easy for sure. You also need to have plenty of water for everybody on hand. And importantly is an AM/FM or shortwave radio with an extendable antenna. If you're in a basement, just with a little tiny antenna, you might not get a very good signal. So have something that you can hang up, a long wire that you can hang up higher and get a little bit better signal. Again, for a full list of these items, check the video that I did on a nuclear war survival kit. Okay. Then you're going to need to be ready to deal with the chaos that's going to happen after there were nuclear bombs dropped, right? Hopefully humanity will rise to the occasion and everybody will chip in and start fixing everything and clearing out of the radioactive areas and all that. But who knows? I think you need to be ready to protect yourself and your family because in the coming months that what happen after this are going to be filled with a lot of challenges and hard times. And it's not anything that we can't rebuild from. It's not anything that we can't overcome. It's not anything, look at Nagasaki and Hiroshima now, right? Those cities were utterly destroyed, and now they are pretty impressive cities. So it isn't the end of the world, but you do need to know some things, and you do need to prepare a little bit, So try to do that. All right, I've rambled long enough on this one. Again, if you want to make sure that your vehicle is going to run, go get an EMP shield. Go to empshield.com. Use the discount code Reality Survival. It'll save you $50. These items are 3 wires to hook on. They take literally 15 to 20 minutes, and it basically just gives you some peace of mind that you can get home or get from wherever you are to your shelter location if you happen to be out and about in your car. I think it's a good idea. You can also put them on your house. Look at their website. They got all the information there. There's test results there from a third party called Keystone Compliance Labs. That company does testing for the military and all that kind of stuff. And they certify or they say that the EMP shield meets the military specs. So to me, that's why I trust it. I trust it because this other company that has nothing to do with EMP shield is not going to put their reputation on the line if they don't work. That's the way I look at it anyway. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, take a look, see what you think. Again, there's lots of different affiliate links down in the description below. I always appreciate it when you guys use those. It helps support the channel. I am a capitalist. I'm not woke. I'm not a socialist. I don't do all that stuff, and so I appreciate it. You're helping me out by using those affiliates, and I thank you for that. Also, if you're not a member of my Substack, you definitely should do that. Go to realitysurvival.substack.com. Sign up your email list. There's free options. You don't have to pay anything if you don't want to. If you want to pay and help support me in my effort to educate people about disaster preparedness without doing it through fear porn and basically doomsday prepper stuff, then I appreciate that. But it's not required. I would just love to have your email address so that I can email you whenever I put videos out. And then you can share those videos, you can comment on them, all that kind of stuff right there on Substack. It's sort of my portal for all the content that we're going to have going there. If paid members, we're going to have some exclusive videos and stuff like that. I'm probably going to do some wilderness survival educational type videos. And then I'm also probably going to start doing my homestead kind of stuff over there. Just all the stuff that I do around here personally, my own personal projects and stuff like that around the house. Because YouTube, nobody really seems to want to watch those except for the people that have been subscribers for a long time and have kind of followed the channel and all that kind of stuff. So I'll probably move that stuff over there too, just to Substack. So anyway, that is pretty much that. Again, I'm just trying to explain this a little bit more thoroughly. Hopefully it makes a little bit more sense to you. if you still don't understand radiation or whatever, go back and look at that nuclear survival skills playlist and look at all those videos. There's 10 or 12 different videos. You got to really watch all of them because they all kind of cover like individual topics. So check those out, and it'll help you understand things a little bit better. All right, thanks for watching. Don't forget to live 6 P's. Proper prior preparation prevents poor performance. Stay safe, guys.